I, 28F, stood beside my new husband, Mark. The wedding reception was a blur of white lace and smiling faces. Everything felt perfect. Too perfect. A little voice in the back of my head had been whispering warnings for months, but I told it to be quiet. I loved Mark. That was all that mattered. We were starting our life together. My family had welcomed him. My friends thought he was charming. He said all the right things. He did all the right things. But sometimes when he looked at me, his eyes were like closed doors. I tried not to think about that. Not today. Today was for happiness. The room was warm, filled with the scent of roses and champagne. Laughter echoed off the high ceilings of the rented hall. My father had spared no expense. He loved seeing me happy, and he believed Mark was the one to do it. Mark clinked a fork against his glass, and a hush fell over our guests. He stood up, his smile wide and confident. He looked handsome in his tuxedo. He looked like the man I had fallen in love with. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," he started. His voice was smooth and practiced. "And a special thank you to my amazing groomsmen. You guys have been with me through thick and thin." He gestured to a small table where several gift-wrapped boxes sat. They were sleek and black, tied with silver ribbons. My brother, Liam, 30M, was among the groomsmen. He stood next to Mark's college friends, looking proud and a little emotional. Liam had been wary of Mark at first, but he had come around. He wanted to see me happy too. Mark picked up the boxes and began handing them out. He gave one to his friend Jake, another to his cousin Ben. Each man clapped him on the back. Then he got to Liam. He paused for a moment, his smile tightening just a little at the edges. I was probably the only one who noticed. He handed the box to my brother. "Thank you, man," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "It means a lot to be up here with you." Mark nodded, but his eyes were cold. He turned back to the microphone. He held his own glass up in a toast. "These gifts are for the people who really know me," he said, his gaze sweeping over the groomsmen before landing for just a second on me. My stomach dropped. It was a strange thing to say. It felt like a jab, a secret message I couldn't understand. It sounded like he was drawing a line in the sand. On one side were his friends, the people who really knew him. On the other side was me, his wife. The comment hung in the air, a sour note in a happy song. I saw my mother frown slightly. Liam looked confused. I tried to shake it off. I was being sensitive. It was our wedding day. Mark was just nervous and grateful to his friends. I forced a smile and took his hand. His skin was cold. The band started playing again and the moment passed. People began to chat and laugh. But I couldn't forget his words. They echoed in my mind, a tiny crack in the perfect facade of the day. Later, the groomsmen gathered in a corner to open their gifts. I watched from our table. Jake and Ben unwrapped their boxes to reveal beautiful engraved silver flasks. They hooted with excitement, pretending to take swigs. They showed each other the engraving. It was a nickname, an inside joke from their college days. It was personal and thoughtful. Then my brother opened his box. I saw his face change. The happy, proud expression melted away. It was replaced by a look of pure confusion. He stared down at the object in his hands. He didn't show it to anyone else. He quickly closed the box and looked over at me. His eyes were wide with a question he didn't know how to ask. A cold dread washed over me. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I excused myself from the table, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to know what was in that box. I walked over to Liam, my wedding dress swishing around my ankles. The other groomsmen were still laughing, oblivious. "Liam, what is it?" I asked. My voice barely a whisper. He looked from the box to Mark, who was now charming my grandmother across the room. "I don't understand," Liam said. He opened the box again and showed it to me. It wasn't a flask. It was a small silver picture frame. And in the frame was a photograph. It was a picture of Mark, smiling broadly. But he wasn't alone. His arm was around a woman with long, dark hair and a familiar smile. It was Sarah, his ex-girlfriend, the woman he told me he hadn't spoken to in years, the woman he said meant nothing to him anymore. Under the picture, a small plaque was engraved with a single date. It was the date of their anniversary, the one he had supposedly forgotten all about. My blood ran cold. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a mistake. This was a message. A cruel, deliberate message. And it wasn't just for Liam. It was for me. Mark's words came rushing back. These are for the people who really know me. Suddenly, it all made a terrible kind of sense. He was telling me that I didn't know him at all. And maybe he was right. I felt dizzy. The room seemed to tilt. What does this mean? I asked Liam, my voice shaking. I have no idea, he said, his own voice low and angry. But we are going to find out. I looked at my husband. He was laughing with my family. He looked like the perfect man. But he had just planted a bomb in the middle of our wedding, and I was the only one who could hear it ticking. My fairy tale was over. It had barely even begun. I needed to talk to him. I had to understand why he would do something so hurtful on our wedding day. I pulled Liam aside, away from the prying eyes of the other guests. Don't say anything to anyone yet, I whispered. Let me handle this. Liam looked at me, his face a mixture of anger and concern. Chloe, this isn't right. He's humiliating you. He's humiliating our family. I know, I said, my voice tight. Just give me a chance to talk to him alone, please. He reluctantly agreed. He slipped the picture frame back into its box and tucked it away. I took a deep breath and walked back to Mark. I had to pretend everything was fine. I smiled at my grandmother and squeezed Mark's arm. Can I talk to you for a second? I asked, my voice sweet as sugar. Of course, my love, he said, kissing my cheek. The gesture felt hollow. I led him away from the dance floor to a small, private hallway near the kitchens. The music faded behind us. The air grew cooler. I turned to face him, my forced smile gone. What was that gift for Liam? I asked, my voice flat. He feigned confusion. The groomsmen gifts? I thought they were great. The guys loved them. Not Liam's, I said. His was different. Why did you give my brother a picture of you and Sarah? Mark's face went blank for a second. A flicker of something, maybe panic, crossed his eyes before he smoothed it over. He let out a short, dismissive laugh. Oh, that. It must have been a mix-up. A mix-up? I repeated. How could that be a mix-up? The other gifts were flasks. His was a picture frame, and it had her name on it, their anniversary date. Look, the company that did the gifts must have messed up the order, he said, waving his hand as if it were a trivial matter. It's no big deal. I'll call them on Monday and get it sorted out. It is a big deal, Mark, I said, my voice rising. You stood up there and said those gifts were for the people who really know you. What was that supposed to mean? He sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. He looked annoyed. You're being dramatic, Chloe. It was just a speech. I was thanking my friends. You're reading way too much into this. This is what he always did. Whenever I had a concern, he would twist it around and make me feel like I was the one with the problem. I was too sensitive. I was overthinking. I was crazy. No, I'm not, I said, standing my ground. This was deliberate. You wanted to hurt me. Hurt you? He scoffed. Why would I want to hurt you? It's our wedding day. I love you. You're just stressed. It's been a long day. Let's just go back to the party and forget about this. He tried to put his arm around me, but I stepped back. I can't forget about this, I said. This is not something I can just forget. His face hardened. The charming groom disappeared, replaced by the cold man I sometimes saw when we were alone. Fine, he said, his voice sharp. Don't forget about it. Ruin our wedding night over a stupid mistake. Is that what you want? I am not ruining it, I thought. You are. I want an explanation, I said. A real one. I already gave you one, he snapped. The gift company made an error. That's the end of the story. Now are you going to come back to our guests, or are you going to hide in this hallway and sulk? He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the dim light. I leaned against the wall, my legs feeling weak. He wasn't just lying. He was enjoying it. He had thrown a stone into the calm waters of our life together and was watching the ripples spread, a smirk on his face. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that this was not a mistake. It was a warning, and I had no idea what was coming next. The rest of the wedding reception passed in a daze. I smiled. I danced. I thanked guests for coming. I played the part of the happy bride. But inside, I felt like a stranger in my own life. Every time Mark touched me, my skin crawled. Every time he called me my love, the words felt like poison. I was an actress in a play, and the script had suddenly changed. Liam caught my eye several times. He looked worried, but he kept his promise and didn't cause a scene. He stayed close, a silent guardian. When it was time for us to leave, he hugged me tightly. Are you going to be okay? He whispered in my ear. I don't know, I whispered back. Call me tomorrow. I will, he promised. Don't let him get to you. We'll figure this out. Mark and I were driven to a fancy hotel for our wedding night. The room was beautiful, with rose petals scattered on the bed and a bottle of champagne chilling in a bucket. It was supposed to be the most romantic night of my life. Instead, it felt like a prison. As soon as the door closed, Mark's charming facade dropped completely. He took off his tuxedo jacket and threw it on a chair. Well, that was a disaster, he said, his back to me. I was stunned. What are you talking about? Everyone had a wonderful time. He turned to face me, his eyes blazing with anger. Don't play dumb, Chloe. You and your brother. The little scene in the hallway. You embarrassed me. I embarrassed you? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. You gave my brother a picture of you and your ex-girlfriend. You humiliated me in front of my entire family. And you think I embarrassed you? It was a mistake, he yelled. How many times do I have to say it? A stupid, meaningless mistake. But you couldn't let it go. You had to make it into this big drama. Because it is a big drama, Mark, I shouted back. This isn't normal. Normal husbands don't do this on their wedding day. Oh, so now I'm not a normal husband? He sneered. We've been married for 6 hours and you're already judging me. I'm not judging you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm asking for the truth. Just tell me the truth. Why did you do it? He walked over to the minibar and poured himself a drink. He didn't offer me one. I told you the truth, he said, his voice calmer now, but laced with contempt. You just don't want to believe it. You want there to be some big, dark secret. You want to be the victim. I felt a wave of nausea. He was twisting everything. He was making me the villain in our story. That's not true, I said weakly. Isn't it? He said, taking a long swallow of his drink. You've always been like this. A little insecure, a little paranoid. I thought it was cute at first. But now it's just exhausting. I sank down onto the edge of the bed. The rose petals felt like thorns. I couldn't believe this was happening. The man I had just promised to spend my life with was calling me paranoid and insecure. He was attacking my character instead of answering a simple question. I'm not paranoid, I whispered. Yes, you are, he said, his voice softening slightly, as if he were trying a new tactic. He came over and sat next to me. He tried to take my hand, but I pulled it away. Hey, he said gently. Come on, it's our wedding night. Let's not fight. Let's just forget about all this and enjoy ourselves. I looked at him. His face was arranged in an expression of sincere concern. It was the face I had fallen in love with. But now I could see the strings. I could see the puppet master pulling them. He wasn't sorry. He was just trying to manage the situation. He was trying to get me back under his control. I can't forget about it, I said, standing up. I walked to the other side of the room, putting as much space between us as I could. Not until you tell me the truth. His face hardened again. The mask was off. There is no other truth, he said, his voice dangerously low. You can either accept that, or you can sleep on the couch. Your choice. He stood up and started to unbutton his shirt, as if the conversation was over, as if my feelings meant nothing, as if he had won. I stared at him, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. This was my husband. This was the man I had given my heart to. And he was a stranger. A cruel, manipulative stranger. I knew then that I couldn't stay in that room with him. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. Fine, I said, my voice barely audible. I'll take the couch. I spent my wedding night huddled under a thin blanket on a small, uncomfortable sofa, while my husband slept soundly in the king-sized bed just a few feet away. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. I just lay there in the dark, listening to the sound of his breathing. And I made a promise to myself. I would not let him get away with this. I would find out the truth, no matter what it took. The fairy tale was over, but my own story was just beginning. The next morning, I woke up stiff and cold. Mark was already in the shower. I could hear the water running. I grabbed my phone and saw a text from Liam. Are you okay? Call me as soon as you can. I quickly typed back. Not okay. Can't talk now. We'll call later. I didn't want Mark to overhear me. I needed to think. I needed a plan. When he came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a fluffy hotel robe, he was smiling again. It was as if our fight had never happened. Good morning, Mrs. Davis, he said cheerfully. Did you sleep well? The question was a deliberate jab. He knew I had slept on the couch. Like a rock, I lied, my voice flat. Good, he said, not missing a beat. I've ordered us some breakfast. It should be here any minute. We have that brunch with your parents at noon, remember? I had forgotten. A post-wedding brunch. My whole family would be there. Mark's parents, too. It was supposed to be a happy, relaxed affair. Now it felt like a trap. I had to face everyone and pretend that my marriage wasn't already a complete sham. I remember, I said. The room service arrived. We ate in silence. The food tasted like cardboard. I kept replaying our conversation from last night in my head. He had called me paranoid, insecure. He had tried to make me doubt my own sanity. This was gaslighting. I had read about it, but I never thought it would happen to me. I needed to get away from him. I needed to talk to Liam. I think I'll go back to our apartment to get changed for the brunch, I said, standing up. I want to wear something different. Okay, he said, looking at his phone. He seemed distracted, almost relieved that I was leaving. Don't be late. Your dad will be expecting us. I won't, I said. As I left the hotel room, I felt a small sense of freedom. Being away from Mark, even for a few hours, felt like coming up for air. I got in a taxi, and instead of going to our apartment, I told the driver to take me to Liam's place. My brother opened the door immediately. He must have been waiting for me. He pulled me into a hug. I was so worried, he said. What happened last night? I followed him inside and collapsed onto his sofa. I told him everything. The fight in the hallway. The argument in the hotel room. The way Mark had twisted my words and made me feel like I was crazy. Liam listened patiently, his anger growing with every word I spoke. When I was finished, he was silent for a long time. He just sat there, clenching and unclenching his fists. I'm going to kill him, he finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. No, I said, putting a hand on his arm. That's what he wants. He wants us to react emotionally. He wants to be able to point at us and say we're the crazy ones. We have to be smart about this. Liam took a deep breath. You're right, he said. You're right. So what's the plan? I don't know yet, I admitted. But we need to find out why he did this. There's a reason. It's not just a random act of cruelty. He nodded. He stood up and walked over to his bookshelf. He picked up the silver picture frame. It glinted under the lights. This is the key, he said. This picture. This date. We looked at it together, Mark and Sarah, smiling without a care in the world. They looked happy. Happier than Mark and I had ever looked, if I was being honest with myself. The date, I said, thinking aloud. It was their 5-year anniversary. He told me he barely remembered her. He's a liar, Liam said simply. We need proof. We need to find out if he's still in contact with her. How? I asked. He's so careful with his phone, he never leaves it unlocked. There are other ways, Liam said, his eyes hardening. His laptop, his email, social media. We just have to be careful. We started to formulate a plan. It felt strange, like we were detectives in a cheap thriller. But this was my life. I had to uncover the truth. I couldn't live in this web of lies for one more day. What about the brunch? Liam asked. We have to go, I said. We have to act normal. We can't let him know that we're onto him. Not yet. Can you do that? He asked, looking at me with concern. Can you sit there and pretend to be his happy wife? I thought about it. I thought about Mark's smug face. I thought about the coldness in his eyes. A new feeling was starting to replace the hurt and confusion. It was anger. A cold, hard anger that gave me strength. Yes, I said, my voice firm. I can. And while I'm doing it, I'll be thinking about how I'm going to take him down. Liam looked at me, a small smile playing on his lips. That's my sister, he said. We had a plan. It was a long shot, but it was something. I went back to my apartment, the one I now shared with Mark. It felt different. The familiar space now seemed alien, tainted by his deception. I chose my outfit for the brunch carefully. A simple, elegant dress. I wanted to look calm and composed. I wanted to look like a woman who was in complete control. When Mark arrived from the hotel, he was back in charming husband mode. You look beautiful, he said, kissing my forehead. I didn't flinch. I just smiled. Thank you, I said. You look nice too. On the way to my parents' house, he tried to make small talk. He talked about our honeymoon, which was supposed to start in 2 days. He talked about our future. It was all a performance, and I was his unwilling audience. I just nodded and smiled, giving him nothing. He seemed to notice my coldness, but he didn't comment on it. He probably thought I was still sulking. He had no idea what was really going on. The brunch was as awful as I had expected. My parents were beaming, so happy for their newly married daughter. Mark's parents were there too, gushing about how perfect we were for each other. I felt like a fraud. My father, a man who prided himself on his ability to read people, pulled me aside at one point. You seem quiet today, sweetheart, he said. Everything okay? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him everything. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed proof. My father was a practical man. He would need more than just a gut feeling and a strange wedding gift. I'm just tired, Dad, I lied. It's been a whirlwind. He patted my hand. Of course it has. You and Mark are going to have a wonderful life together. I'm so proud of you. His words felt like a knife in my heart. I was letting him down, but I had no choice. I had to protect him. I had to protect our family from the snake we had welcomed into our home. During the brunch, I watched Mark carefully. He was the perfect son-in-law. He laughed at my dad's jokes. He complimented my mom's cooking. He talked about his job with enthusiasm. He was so convincing. It was terrifying. Liam was a rock. He stayed by my side, offering quiet support. He engaged Mark in conversation, keeping him distracted. At one point, Liam mentioned Sarah's name casually, just to see how Mark would react. "Hey, I was just thinking," Liam said. "That picture in my gift box. That was Sarah, right? I haven't seen her in years. How is she doing?" I held my breath. Mark didn't even blink. He took a sip of his orange juice and shrugged. "Yeah, that was her. Honestly, I have no idea how she is. We haven't spoken since we broke up. Like I said, the gift company must have pulled an old photo from my social media or something. It was a really weird mistake." He was so smooth, so believable. If I didn't know better, I would have believed him myself. But I saw the tiny muscle that twitched in his jaw. I saw the way his eyes flickered away for just a second. He was lying, and he was good at it. After the brunch, Mark and I went back to our apartment. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. "I'm going to take a nap," he announced, heading for the bedroom. This was my chance. As soon as I heard the bedroom door close, I went to his study. His laptop was on the desk, closed. My heart was pounding. This felt wrong. I was invading his privacy, but he had left me no choice. He had invaded my life, my family, my heart. I opened the laptop. It was password protected, of course. I tried a few common passwords. Our anniversary, my birthday, his birthday. Nothing worked. I felt a surge of frustration. I was so close. Then I remembered something he had said once, a long time ago. He was talking about his first pet, a golden retriever named Buddy. He had loved that dog. On a whim, I typed in Buddy 123. The screen unlocked. I felt a jolt of adrenaline. I was in. I didn't know where to start. His email? His documents? I clicked on his email first. It was mostly work-related stuff and junk mail. I searched for Sarah's name. Nothing came up. He must have deleted everything. I tried his social media. He wasn't very active, but I checked his messages. Again, nothing. He was either very careful, or I was completely wrong about everything. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of doubt. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe I was just being paranoid. No. I thought of the picture frame, the look on Liam's face, the coldness in Mark's eyes. This was real. I just hadn't found the proof yet. I went back to his files. I started clicking through folders, work projects, financial documents, vacation photos. It all seemed so normal. I was about to give up when I saw a folder with a strange name. It was just a string of numbers. It looked out of place. My hand was shaking as I clicked on it. The folder opened. It contained only one file, a password-protected PDF. My heart sank. Another dead end. But then I looked at the file name again. It was a date, the same date that was engraved on the picture frame, the date of his and Sarah's anniversary. He was arrogant. He was so sure of himself that he didn't even bother to hide it properly. He was practically taunting me. I didn't know the password to the file, and I knew I couldn't guess it. But I had the file itself. I quickly copied it to a USB drive I found in his desk drawer. Then I closed everything, cleared the recent history, and put the laptop back exactly where I had found it. I walked out of the study, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had something. I didn't know what it was, but it was a start. Mark was still asleep in the bedroom. I slipped out of the apartment and went straight back to Liam's. I showed him the USB drive. "I found this on his laptop," I explained. "It's a password-protected file, but the file name is their anniversary date." Liam's eyes lit up. "This is it," he said. "This has to be it." "But we can't open it," I said, feeling defeated. "We don't have the password." Liam was a software engineer. He was good with computers. He looked at the file for a long time, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Maybe we don't need to," he said slowly. "There are programs that can break passwords. It might take a while, but it's possible." A tiny sliver of hope ignited within me. "Can you do it?" I asked. "I can try," he said. "Let me see what I can do." He plugged the USB drive into his own computer and started working. I watched him, my anxiety growing with every passing minute. It felt like our entire future was hanging in the balance. While Liam worked, I started thinking about other things. Little inconsistencies. Things Mark had said or done that didn't quite add up. I remembered him being very secretive about his finances. He had insisted on keeping our bank accounts separate, even after we got married. He said it was cleaner that way. At the time, I thought it was modern and practical. Now, it seemed suspicious. I also remembered conversations about my father's business. Mark was always very interested in it. He asked a lot of questions. He wanted to know about profits, expansion plans, my father's retirement strategy. I had thought he was just showing an interest in my family. Now I wondered if there was another motive. My family had money. We weren't billionaires, but my father had built a very successful construction company from the ground up. He was proud of it, and he was generous. He had paid for our entire wedding without blinking an eye. He had also offered to help Mark with a down payment on a house. Mark had his own business venture he was always talking about, a tech startup. He said it was going to be the next big thing. He had been trying to get investors. He had even pitched the idea to my father. My dad was impressed with his ambition. He had said he would consider investing after the wedding. A cold, horrifying thought started to form in my mind. What if this was all about money? What if Mark didn't love me at all? What if I was just a means to an end? A way for him to get access to my family's wealth? The idea was so ugly, so monstrous, that I almost couldn't bear it. But it made a terrifying amount of sense. It explained the lies. It explained the cruelty. It explained the picture of Sarah. It was a message to her, a promise that their plan was working. "I think I'm in," Liam said suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. I rushed over to his computer. He had done it. The PDF file was open on the screen. It wasn't a document. It was a series of screenshots, text messages, between Mark and Sarah. I started to read, and the world fell out from under me. The messages went back for months. They had never broken up. It was all a lie. They had a plan. A detailed, calculated plan to defraud my family. "He's taking the bait," one of Mark's texts read. "The old man is ready to invest in our startup. Just a little more time." "Don't get too comfortable, honey," Sarah had replied. "Remember who you're doing this for. As soon as you get the money, we're gone." There were messages about me. They called me the Golden Goose. They made fun of my clothes, my friends, my laugh. They mocked my love for him. "She's so naive," Mark had written. "She actually believes I love her. It's almost sad." I felt the air leave my lungs. I had to sit down before I collapsed. Liam put a steadying hand on my shoulder. "There's more," he said, his voice grim. He scrolled down. There were bank statements, a joint account in Mark and Sarah's names. It had a substantial amount of money in it. Small, regular deposits. I recognized the amounts. They were the same amounts Mark had been transferring from his personal account into what he called his business savings. He was siphoning money, preparing for his escape. And then I saw the final message. It was from the morning of our wedding. "Today's the day," Mark had written. "Wish me luck. I'm going to need it to get through this farce." Sarah had replied with a picture. The picture. The one from the frame. "Don't forget what's waiting for you," she had written. "I'll be thinking of you. I'll even be at the church in the back row, just to watch." She had been there. She had watched me walk down the aisle. She had watched me say my vows. She had watched me marry the man who was planning to destroy my life. And the gift to Liam? It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a warning. It was a trophy. A sick, twisted souvenir of their victory. I couldn't read anymore. I felt a blind, white-hot rage build inside me, the kind of rage that burns away tears and leaves behind a cold, hard resolve. They had underestimated me. They thought I was naive. They thought I was a victim. They were about to find out how wrong they were. "Print it," I said to Liam, my voice shaking with fury. "Print every single page." Liam didn't hesitate. The printer started whirring, spitting out page after page of their lies, their betrayal, their plan. We made multiple copies. One for me, one for Liam, one for my father, and one for anyone else who needed to see the truth. "What are you going to do?" Liam asked, his face pale. "I'm going to finish this," I said, "but I'm going to do it on my own terms." I had to go back to the apartment. I had to face Mark one more time before everything blew up. I had to pretend to be the loving wife, just for a little while longer. It was the hardest thing I had ever had to do. I walked back into the apartment, the printed evidence tucked safely in my purse. Mark was awake, watching TV in the living room. "Hey," he said, smiling at me. I was starting to get worried. "Where did you go?" "Just for a walk," I lied smoothly. I needed to clear my head. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Much better," I said, my voice filled with a meaning that he couldn't possibly understand. He patted the seat next to him on the couch. "Good. Come sit with me. Let's talk about the honeymoon. I was thinking we could go snorkeling in Hawaii." I sat down, my body stiff. I let him talk. I let him spin his pretty lies about our future together, our house, our kids, our life. And with every word he spoke, my resolve hardened. He had no idea that I knew everything. He had no idea that his whole world was about to come crashing down around him. He thought he was the one in control. He thought he was the master manipulator. But he had made one fatal mistake. He had hurt my brother. And in doing so, he had turned my family against him. He had given me a reason to fight back. And I was going to fight. That night, I slept in our bed. I lay next to him, my body rigid, my eyes wide open in the dark. I listened to the steady rhythm of his breathing, and I imagined him in a jail cell. The thought brought me a grim satisfaction. The next day was Saturday. Our honeymoon flight was scheduled for Monday morning. We had one full day left, one day for me to put my plan into action. Mark was in a great mood. He thought he had weathered the storm. He thought I had accepted his flimsy excuse about the gift. He was relaxed and confident. He suggested we go out for a nice dinner, a pre-honeymoon celebration. "That sounds lovely," I said, my smile feeling like a mask. While he was in the shower, I made a phone call to my father. "Dad," I said, my voice low and urgent, "I need to talk to you. It's about Mark." "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked, concern in his voice. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "It's not. But I can't talk now. Can you and Mom come over to the house tomorrow morning, around 10? And please don't say anything to Mark." "Of course," he said, his voice serious now. He knew me well enough to know that I wouldn't ask for something like this unless it was important. "We'll be there." Next, I called Mark's parents. I had always had a good relationship with them. They seemed like kind, decent people. I felt a pang of guilt for what I was about to do to them, but they needed to know the truth about their son. "Hi, it's Chloe," I said when his mother answered. "I was hoping you and John could come over to our apartment tomorrow morning, around 10. I'm trying to arrange a little surprise for Mark before we leave for our honeymoon." "Oh, how lovely," she said, completely unsuspecting. "Of course, dear. We'd love to." The final piece of the puzzle was Liam. He already knew the plan. He would be there, with his own copy of the evidence. The stage was set. All I had to do was get through one more dinner with the man who had betrayed me. The dinner was surreal. We went to a fancy Italian restaurant, the kind with white tablecloths and candles. Mark ordered expensive wine and toasted to our future. To us, he said, clinking his glass against mine. To a long and happy life together. I smiled and took a sip of wine. To us, I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. He talked endlessly about his startup. He was so passionate, so convincing. He laid out his business plan, his projections, his vision. He was a brilliant actor. I had to give him that. He was talking about a company that didn't exist, a future that would never happen, and he did it with a straight face. He even had the audacity to bring up my father's investment again. I think your dad is really coming around to the idea, he said, a greedy glint in his eye. Once we get back from Hawaii, I'm going to set up a formal meeting with him. I think this is really going to be the thing that sets us up for life. I'm sure it will be, I said, my voice carefully neutral. I just had to hold on for a few more hours. I just had to keep playing my part. The thought of what was coming tomorrow gave me the strength to endure the charade. When we got back to the apartment, he tried to be affectionate. He put his arms around me and tried to kiss me. I turned my head at the last second, so his lips brushed my cheek. I'm really tired, I said, pulling away. I think I'm just going to go to bed. He looked disappointed, but he didn't push it. Okay, he said. Get some rest. We have a big day tomorrow. Yes, we do, I said, looking him straight in the eye. A very big day. I went into the bedroom and closed the door. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, waiting for the sun to rise. I was nervous, but I was also ready. I was ready to take back my life. I was ready for him to face the consequences of his actions. He had thought he could play me for a fool, but the game was over, and I was about to be the one who declared checkmate. The next morning, I woke up before Mark. I got up, showered, and dressed. I put on a simple pair of jeans and a sweater. I wasn't playing the part of the bride anymore. I was just me. Mark woke up slowly, stretching and yawning. He smiled when he saw me. Good morning, beautiful, he said. Good morning, I replied, my voice calm and even. He had no idea what was about to happen. He thought it was just a normal Sunday. He thought we were just a normal married couple. At 9:45, the doorbell rang. Mark looked confused. Are we expecting someone? He asked. It's a surprise, I said, my heart starting to pound. I opened the door to find my parents. My mom was holding a gift basket. My dad had a serious expression on his face. He knew something was wrong. Mom, Dad, I said, forcing a cheerful tone. Come on in. Mark came to the door, a fake smile plastered on his face. What a surprise. It's so good to see you both. We just wanted to drop off a little something for your honeymoon, my mom said, handing him the basket. Just then, the doorbell rang again. It was Mark's parents. They looked happy and excited. Chloe, dear, we're here, his mother chirped. Now Mark was really confused. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. I just smiled sweetly. I invited them too. I thought we could all have a coffee before John and I have to start packing. The four parents greeted each other warmly. They all sat down in the living room, making small talk. The atmosphere was pleasant, but I could feel the tension building under the surface. The final guest arrived a few minutes later. It was Liam. He walked in, his face grim, and handed me a manila envelope. I took it and placed it on the coffee table. Mark was starting to look nervous. He kept glancing at me, then at the envelope. He knew this wasn't a surprise party. Something else was going on. Everyone was seated. The small talk died down. The room was silent. All eyes were on me. I took a deep breath. It was time. Thank you all for coming. I started, my voice clear and steady. I know this is a bit unusual, but I have something very important to discuss. And I wanted us all to be here together. I looked directly at Mark. His smile was gone. His face was a mask of wary confusion. Mark, I said, my voice dropping, we need to talk about your groomsmen gifts. A flicker of anger crossed his face. Chloe, not this again, he said, his voice low and warning. "We talked about this. It was a mistake." "No, it wasn't," I said calmly. "It was a message. A trophy. A little souvenir from the victory you thought you had won." His parents looked shocked. "Chloe, what are you talking about?" his mother asked. "I'm talking about this," I said. I reached into my purse and pulled out the picture frame, the one he had given to Liam. I placed it on the coffee table for everyone to see. "Mark gave this to my brother at our wedding. It's a picture of him and his girlfriend, Sarah." "Ex-girlfriend," Mark corrected automatically, his voice tight. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Not his ex-girlfriend. His current girlfriend. The woman he has been planning a future with. A future paid for by my family." My father stiffened. My mother gasped. Mark's face went white. "Chloe, you're being ridiculous," he stammered. "You're hysterical." "Am I?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. I picked up the manila envelope. "Then maybe you can explain this." I opened the envelope and took out the printed pages, the text messages, the bank statements. I handed a copy to my father and another to Mark's father. "What is this?" my mom asked, her voice trembling. "It's proof," I said. "Proof that my husband married me under false pretenses. Proof that he has been in a relationship with another woman this whole time. Proof that he was planning on taking my father's investment money and running away with her." The room was silent as the two fathers read the documents. I watched their faces change. Confusion turned to disbelief. Disbelief turned to shock. And shock turned to a cold, hard fury. Mark was cornered. He looked like a trapped animal. He started to bluster. "This is insane. These are fake. She's making this all up. She's the crazy one." "Are they fake, Mark?" Liam asked, speaking for the first time. His voice was like ice. "Because I'm a software engineer, I can trace the metadata on the original file. I can prove exactly when and where these screenshots were taken. From your laptop." Mark's jaw dropped. He had no way out. He was caught. His mother started to cry. "Mark, is this true? Tell me this isn't true." He didn't answer her. He just stared at me, his eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was frightening. "You," he whispered. "You did this. You did this to yourself, Mark," I said, my voice filled with all the pain and anger I had been holding back. "You thought I was stupid. You thought I was weak. You thought you could use me and my family and then just throw us away." My father stood up. He was a big man, and when he was angry, he was terrifying. He walked over to Mark and stood over him. "You are going to leave this apartment right now," my father said, his voice a low growl. "You are going to take nothing but the clothes on your back, and if you ever come near my daughter again, I will personally make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life." Mark's father stood up too. He looked at his son with utter disgust. "I am so ashamed of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't even know who you are." Mark was broken. The charming facade had crumbled, revealing the pathetic, greedy little man underneath. He didn't even try to defend himself anymore. He just sat there, defeated. "Get out," my father repeated. Slowly, Mark stood up. He didn't look at anyone. He walked to the door, opened it, and left. He didn't say a word. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. The aftermath was messy. Mark's mother was inconsolable. My mother was trying to comfort her, even though she was in shock herself. My father immediately got on the phone with his lawyer. He was talking about annulment, fraud charges, and restraining orders. Liam came over and put his arm around me. "You did it," he said quietly. "You were amazing." I didn't feel amazing. I felt empty. I felt numb. But I also felt a small flicker of something else. Relief. It was over. The lies were over. Mark's parents left soon after. His father apologized to me and my family profusely. He promised they would do whatever they could to make things right. I knew it wasn't their fault, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything to them. I was too drained. After they were gone, my family rallied around me. My mom made tea. My dad talked about the legal steps we needed to take. Liam just sat with me, a silent, supportive presence. "What about the honeymoon?" My mom asked gently. "I think I'll cancel it," I said. "No," Liam said suddenly. "Don't. You should go." I looked at him, confused. "Go on my honeymoon? Alone?" "Not alone," he said, a small smile on his face. "Take me with you. We both deserve a vacation after this. Let's go to Hawaii and forget about all of this for a week." My dad chimed in. "That's a brilliant idea. The trip is already paid for. You two should go." "Get away from here." I looked at my brother. I thought about sitting on a beach, feeling the sun on my face, with someone who loved me unconditionally. The idea was incredibly appealing. A small, genuine smile touched my lips for the first time in days. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." The next few days were a blur of legal meetings and emotional conversations. We found out that Mark had completely drained his personal bank account the day after the wedding. He was gone. He had likely gone straight to Sarah, but he had left with nothing but the few $1,000s he had managed to siphon. He didn't get my father's investment. He didn't get a house. He didn't get the life of luxury he had planned. My father's lawyers were ruthless. They filed for an annulment based on fraud. They also pressed charges. There was a warrant out for his arrest. He was a fugitive. His life, as he knew it, was over. A week later, Liam and I were on a plane to Hawaii. As the plane took off, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was leaving the wreckage of my old life behind. I was starting over. We spent the week on the beach. We went snorkeling, we went hiking. We talked for hours, we laughed. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. I felt free. One evening, we were sitting on the balcony of our hotel room watching the sunset. "Thank you, Liam," I said quietly. "I couldn't have gotten through this without you." "Of course," he said, putting his arm around me. "That's what family is for. We protect each other." I thought about Mark's cruel words at the wedding. "These gifts are for the people who really know me." He had been right, in a twisted way. He had given us all a gift. He had shown us exactly who he was. A liar, a cheat, a coward. And in doing so, he had revealed who I was. I wasn't the naive, weak victim he thought I was. I was a survivor. I was strong. And I was finally free. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. It was the end of a very long day, but it was also the beginning of a brand new one. And I was ready for it. I was ready for whatever came next. I knew that as long as I had my family, as long as I had people who truly knew me and loved me, I would be okay. The storm was over, and I had survived. When we returned from Hawaii, I felt renewed. The legal process was still ongoing, but it was in the capable hands of my father's lawyers. I focused on rebuilding my life. I moved out of the apartment I had shared with Mark, purging every last trace of him. It was cathartic, like shedding a skin that no longer fit. I found a new place, smaller and brighter, a space that was entirely my own. My friends were a huge source of support. They were horrified when I told them the whole story. My maid of honor, Jessica, was particularly incensed. "I never liked him," she confessed one afternoon over coffee. "There was always something off about him. Too smooth, too perfect. I just didn't want to say anything because you seemed so happy." I wasn't happy, I admitted, stirring my latte. "I was just pretending to be. I think a part of me always knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to believe it." "Well, you believe it now," she said, squeezing my hand. "And you handled it like a boss. I'm so proud of you." Her words meant a lot. I had spent so long feeling foolish and naive, but my friends and family didn't see me that way. They saw me as strong and resilient. Their belief in me helped me to start believing in myself again. A few weeks later, there was a break in the case. The police had located Mark and Sarah. They were living in a cheap motel in another state, their stolen money quickly running out. They were arrested and extradited back to our state to face charges of fraud and conspiracy. I had to give a statement to the police. It was difficult, reliving the betrayal all over again. But it was also empowering. I was no longer a silent victim. I was a key witness in the case against him. My voice mattered. My story mattered. The trial was a media spectacle. Runaway groom scams wealthy family. The headlines were sensational and embarrassing, but I refused to hide. I walked into that courtroom every day with my head held high, my family by my side. Mark looked terrible. He had lost weight. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by a standard issue orange jumpsuit. The charming, confident man I had married was gone. In his place was a hollowed-out shell of a person, his eyes filled with desperation and resentment. Sarah was there too, looking just as pathetic. They tried to avoid my gaze, but I made sure to look directly at them. I wanted them to see that they hadn't broken me. The evidence was overwhelming. The text messages, the bank statements, the testimony from my father about the planned investment. Their lawyer tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, a lover's quarrel blown out of proportion. But no one on the jury was buying it. The most satisfying moment of the trial came when Liam took the stand. He calmly and methodically explained how he had uncovered the password-protected file on Mark's laptop. He presented the metadata, proving its authenticity beyond a shadow of a doubt. He was clear, concise, and utterly convincing. He was my hero. When it was my turn to testify, I was nervous. But as I started speaking, a strange calm came over me. I told the court everything, from the strange speech at the wedding to the horrifying discovery of the text messages. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I just stated the facts. The verdict came quickly. Guilty on all charges. Mark and Sarah were sentenced to several years in prison. They were also ordered to pay restitution, though we all knew we would never see that money. But it wasn't about the money. It was about justice. As they were led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, Mark finally looked at me. His face was a twisted mask of hatred. If looks could kill, I would have been dead on the spot. But I didn't flinch. I just held his gaze until the doors swung shut behind him. He was out of my life for good. Life slowly returned to a new kind of normal. The annulment was granted. Legally, it was as if my marriage to Mark had never happened. The media attention faded. People moved on to the next scandal. And I was left to pick up the pieces of my life. I went back to work. I reconnected with friends. I started exploring new hobbies. I was rediscovering who I was without Mark. And I was starting to like the person I was finding. One day, about a year after the trial, I was having dinner with my parents and Liam. We were celebrating my father's birthday. The mood was light and happy. We were laughing and telling stories. You know, my father said, raising his glass. A year ago, I never would have thought we'd be sitting here like this, so happy and at peace. We got through it, my mom said, smiling at me. Because we had each other. And because Chloe is a fighter, Liam added, bumping his shoulder against mine. I smiled. They were right. We had gotten through it. The whole ordeal had been a nightmare, but it had also brought us closer together. It had shown us how strong our family bond truly was. Later that evening, as Liam and I were helping with the dishes, he turned to me. "Have you thought about dating again?" he asked casually. I paused, a soapy plate in my hands. "Not really," I admitted. "I don't know if I'm ready to trust anyone like that again." "I get it," he said. "Just don't let what that monster did ruin your life forever. There are good guys out there, you know." "I know," I said. "And maybe someday I'll be ready to find one. But for now, I'm happy just being me." And it was true. I was happy. I had my family, my friends, my career. I had my freedom. Mark had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, he had failed. He had lost everything, while I had gained a new appreciation for my life and the people in it. His cruel gift had been intended to hurt me, to mock me. But in a strange way, it had been a gift after all. It had been a wake-up call. It had forced me to open my eyes and see the truth. It had set me on a path to a better, more authentic life. I finished washing the last dish and put it in the rack to dry. I looked out the kitchen window at the night sky. The stars were bright and clear. The future was unknown, but for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I had survived the storm, and I had come out stronger on the other side. Mark thought he was closing a chapter, but all he did was force me to start a new, much better book. And I was the only author.